with that so far? So let's set the tone, let's set the mood. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is a safe place. This is a place in which we can actually talk and say, hey, this is what I think about it. Because one of the things that we need to know is that this is currently right now in a formulation that has not been signed off by all the 5 individuals just yet. So what that does is it gives us an opportunity to be able to say, you know what, we need to change this line, or we need to fix that, or I'm completely not good with that. So please speak freely. We've had some spirited conversations over the last 2 days since being the 3rd day, and it's been awesome. It's been awesome. You know how the fire service is, man. We can solve the problems of the world on the tailboard, but we have to actually verbalize it or at the kitchen table. So we got to make sure that we talk about it. So if there's things as we go through this presentation, you say, you know what, man, this sucks, or this is stupid, or we're not doing this in our house. Let's talk about it, right? And let's get it aired out there. We can take some notes, got some notes that we picked over the last couple days, and we can actually hopefully make some changes to make sure that it works for what we got. Because we know, let's be honest, we know there's no way we can actually come up with a document in black and white on a piece of paper that's going to catch every situation that you guys come across. It's not going to happen. It could be, you know, this doggone big, and it's still not going to have everything in there. Does that make sense? So can we kind of agree on that as far as this being a safe place? We can talk about it. We're all humans. We're going to make it happen. So with that being said, I'll be the first one to kind of share with you. I'll show you my human side of things, so this way you guys know. So who are our grammar gurus in the room? Any grammar gurus? Spelling guys? I'm looking at Joyce right now. I think it's going to be Joyce right now. This is what I think. But in my PowerPoint, the very first day when I put it up there, we're going through, we're checking links just to make sure it's all good. Probably about 15 minutes into the presentation, and then I realized, holy crap, I have a misspelled word, you know? And the guys that know me from my organization, they know my Achilles heel. Well, there's probably more than that. It's what I found, you know, what I found. All right, so my Achilles heel, even with spell check, is spelling. So for today, I'll be from Boston. So when you see the word quarterback, it's actually kind of spelled quarterback. All right, so I'm a Bostonite today. That's why the word's misspelled. But I say that to say this, that we all have human sides to it. As a county, as chiefs and ICs, and all the way through to our newest firefighter, we all have different issues and problems. We want to try to capture that, talk about that, just to make things a little bit better. That sound cool? All right, so if you guys can't talk back to us as we start going through the thing, there's certain points in that where we want to get your views, truly, honestly, unfiltered. Well, you could, you know, keep it kind of filtered, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, this is a curse word, but say something, you know, straight up about it. So what we'll kind of cover here today, we'll talk a little bit about our shared countywide goals, incident command. We'll talk a little bit about our alarm assignments. We have a wonderful representative from Lead Control with us. All right, Diane, correct?
Yes.
Right, and so Diane will actually be answering questions for us. Over the last 2 days has been a phenomenal opportunity for us. One of the things we really identified real quick when we're trying to present this is that, you know what, we really don't know what Lead Control does. There's no way I can sit up here and try to tell you what Lead Control does. So we got with Casey. Casey was able to make sure dispatchers were here every day, and it's been phenomenal. A lot of questions. So if you guys have questions directly for Lead Control as it relates to this, it's a great time to actually ask those questions. We've learned a lot over the last couple days in that aspect. We'll also talk about residential structures, multifamily residentials, and of course, obviously commercials. So let's talk a little about the history. Where did this thing come from? Where did this little idea and the genesis of this come from? Many guys do know when Chief Nesbitt actually went to Estero, I believe it was, he developed that Lee County playbook for his particular organization. It was something that they utilized, I believe it was at Estero, that they utilized for their folks. Hey, if we get this is how we do it. If we get this, we get that. Then we actually moved over to the Bayshore. It was asked of him by, I think, Chief William Elliott, who was Lee County Fire Chiefs Association president at the time. Hey, can we share that countywide? This is good stuff. I think they started using it on the north end a little bit, and then it's actually been in transition since then. There's been some holdouts, this is bullcrap, I ain't never doing this is stupid, you know, throughout the last, I don't know how many years of this document floating around, but never really being accepted, right, for one reason or for another. So where we are today is closer than I think we've ever been as a county, as far as saying, hey, look, we got some shared goals, some shared mindsets, and some acceptance of we're working together. Does that make sense? If you guys look on what we do today as far as fire districts and departments, we are working together a lot more than we probably have, and truth be told, we're working a lot more effectively and efficiently than what we ever done before too. So this is just kind of how that actually got there. So let's talk about some shared goals here, or let's watch the video first. There's that word, I'm from Boston. Y'all see it? Y'all see it? I should have said that. Y'all probably wouldn't notice, would you? It's spelled wrong. It is spelled wrong, right? Yeah, yes, actually, but here again, this is an honest space. We want to point out our deficiencies in our areas. So what this video is actually, we'll just kind of set the stage, set the tone, kind of talk about what we're doing here, and more so talk about you guys as ICs and battalion chiefs, what you guys do, right? Because really, the truth of the matter is, you guys are the quarterbacks when it comes to a fire scene. You guys are the ones that are making those calls. So the video has a little bit of length to it, and that's okay. But as we go through, if you guys can do me a favor, as we go through this video, please, I want you guys to either write on your paper or mentally take notes of things that are similar to what these NFL quarterbacks do and what you guys do as ICs. Does that make sense? So as you're going through, be like, yep, that's kind of relates to us, that relates to us, and just kind of make notes of that, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion about how that plays into you guys as the quarterbacks of the fire service. Does that make sense a little bit? Everybody good?
Yes.
Thank you.
You want some feedback from us?
Y'all killing it, brother, right now. Yeah.
They get the girls. They appear in commercials. They are paid hundreds of millions of dollars. They hoist Super Bowl trophies. They are the quarterbacks. So, what exactly does a quarterback do? Being a quarterback isn't about arm strength
Stevie Brown ran right into each other.
and speed.
He can run, and he proves it right here.
It's about performing one of the most intellectual and mentally challenging jobs in any profession. A majority of quarterbacks' job is done prior to the game. In the week leading up to the game, a quarterback spends a lot of time studying film of his opponent, by himself and with his team. What formations, personnel, plays, mistakes the opponents tend to make.
And it's intercepted in the end zone.
Quarterbacks also spend hours in meetings with coaches, strategizing and deciding the game plan for their next game. What should the team do facing an opponent with a particularly strong defense? What should they do in this down and distance? What if the weather is bad? And then there are even more meetings with the entire team to review their game plan. And that's in addition to the practice, conditioning, and rehab they have to go through. Game time. If you are a student, you probably have about 2 hours to be tested on a material you have been studying in days prior to the test. If you are a quarterback, your test is exactly 40 seconds. For each play, a quarterback has 40 seconds or 25 seconds to decide what to do for this play. Before we get into what he does in that 40 seconds, let's see what a play call is.
East right flop, V right all the way outside, Y left, fake 396 bag, V hinge, Z puck. Is that long enough for you?
Nice right, ice cream, alert, 654, Jose.
A play call tells each player of the team what to do in each play. What formation should they set up in? Will it be a run play or a pass play? Which hole should the running back run to? Which route should the receiver run? And how to block. Let's look at an example. A call could be Brown right F short 2 jet flanker drive. Brown right means the tight end will line up on the right side, the fullback behind the quarterback, and the halfback on the right of the fullback. F short means the flanker, also known as a Z receiver, will motion closer to the tight end before the ball is snapped. 2 jet is a protection scheme which tells the offensive line where and who to block. Flanker drive means the Z receiver will run a shallow cross route. The tight end runs an in route, the running back will run a quick out route, and the X receiver could be asked to run any route. And if you think that's confusing and too much to process, that's just for one play call. There could be more than 50 possible options, depending on the situation of the game. A quarterback needs to be clear-minded and calm through the game to know what the team will be doing.
Hey, you got him.
Now let's go back to what the quarterback does in the 40 seconds with the play call. First, he gets the play call from the coaches through the headset in his helmet. The play call could be, say, 72. Then the quarterback checks his wristband to find the corresponding play for 72. He gets into the huddle and tells his team what the call is.
Hulk left slot. Dixie left. Key left. Mercedes. Wide chip. Ricky. Zebra left. 75.
Then the team breaks the huddle and goes back to the line of scrimmage. The quarterback surveys the field and checks the defense's formation. To complicate things, defenses can be pretty good at disguising their strategy, so a good quarterback has to be smart enough to see through the trickery. The hours of film study would help him in this case. What did the defense do the last time we set up in this formation? Who is the Mike or middle linebacker?
50's the mic. All the way to the left. 12.
Should we change the play call? What are we changing to?
34. 34.
He then has to communicate that change to his team within seconds. And then, finally, makes the snap count, and the center snaps the ball. If that's not nerve-wracking enough, try having a giant ticking clock staring at you while doing these mental calculations. Things get worse when it's not a home game. The crowd will cheer their loudest to distract the quarterback, and bad things happen due to crowd noise. To know how it feels like, try playing speed chess at a rock concert with hundreds of thousands of people staring, cheering, and booing at every one of your moves. After the snap, if the quarterback plans to throw the ball, he has about 2 seconds to throw it to the receiver. But wait, sometimes receivers are covered, or the defense is blitzing, so he has to immediately find another receiver. Or the receiver ends up running another route, so both the quarterback and the receiver have to be on the same page on where the ball should be. And that's why the quarterback-receiver chemistry is so important. Remember, he has to do it all in about 2 seconds, while a group of 350-pound men are chasing after him to bring him down. Keep the ball any longer, he will likely be sacked. Even on the sidelines, while other players are catching their breath, the quarterback doesn't get to rest. He reviews previous plays with coaches to see if there were any mistakes or missed opportunities and make adjustments for the next plays. And as the leader of the team, he also rallies his troops.
Come on. Let's go. Stay hungry. Championship mindset. Let's go. That's the way to ask. That's what we got to do. We got to do it again now. We're going to have to do it again.
Even after a long 2-hour game, the quarterback's job isn't done. As the face of the team, he holds a post-game press conference.
They're an excellent team. They deserve to win tonight. They played better than we did.
And despite the fatigue and the emotional blow of the particularly nasty loss, he still has to suit up, maintain his cool, and address the press.
It's not an easy pill to swallow, but eventually we have to.
After that, he is officially done for the day and goes through the same mental, physical demands again for the next game.
Like I said, the video had a little bit of length to it. It's all good. So let's kind of talk about that. So watching that video, as far as what these NFL quarterbacks do and what their jobs are, how does that correlate? How does that relate to what you guys do as the quarterbacks of the fire department as ICs? What kind of things do you see as far as being similar in that?
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, right? You arrive up on scene, either someone already gave a code 11 or you come up and you have to give that code 11 of what you have. And you do have, I think they said they have, 40 to 25 seconds to make a decision of what they have, what they see. And basically the same thing. You guys actually have to make those decisions based upon when you roll up. What do you have based upon your experience, your expertise, your knowledge, and your skills to say, hey, look, this is what I have, and this is what we should be doing. This is the mode that we should be operating in, right? You guys have that pressure on you every time you pull up or someone passes or transfers command to you. What other things did you guys see?
A lot of variables.
A lot of variables, right?
Everything's different every time.
Yes, sir. And that's one of the things that we want to make sure from a theory and an ideology is that this is a guideline. We know that you guys are extremely trained professionals, that this guideline is going to be a help to you. It's not a always thing, right? Because you're going to pull up to a scene and say, you know what? make an audible, I need to do this, right? The famous Omaha, right? Because you're gonna get up there, you're gonna get to that line of scrimmage, if you will, and you're gonna say, hey, look, man, this guy's lined up, this play is not designed that way, I need to call an audible. Make sure everybody on your team is able to make that adjustment. And that is something we wanna make sure everyone understands, even with this guideline, you guys are still probably gonna have that ability, will have that ability to make those audible calls based upon your need of that particular situation and what you see. Sound cool? What else? What else did we see?
The correlation of the quarterback having to memorize all the plays, and we have to know our, like you said, our guidelines, our policies, our procedures,
Yes, sir.
we have to know certain things.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That have to get, conveyed out to the guys.
Made out, yeah. And some other things also too, go along with that, is one of the things to talk about is all the work that takes place before the game, right? And that's all the stuff that you guys do as, ICs, driving your districts, driving your areas, seeing some of your target hazards, seeing some of your areas that, man, this is gonna be a crazy water situation, trying to get, water back here. These are all things that you have actually already preempted yourself, that God forbid if one of those structures, those pre-plans, right? If one of those structures were to catch on fire, hey, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z, right? Another thing to talk about is actually that quarterback-receiver relationship, make sure they know each other. And that's something I know that you guys do in training and other things that you guys do, is where you guys have an opportunity to know your crews, right? I'm quite sure, I'm just stepping out on a ledge here, I'm quite sure when you guys roll up, you look at your staffing for the day, you say, ooh, if we get a fire, I probably want these folks to do this, and maybe these folks to do that, just based upon what you have there. Maybe, possibly, right? So just kind of just understanding who your folks are and know what they're gonna do. What other type of correlation or simulation did you guys see? Distractions.
Issues.
Right.
Pull up on the scene, you got somebody runs up to you right away, giving you information when you're trying to concentrate.
Yeah, that chest with everyone booing and all that stuff at you. Yeah, a lot of distractions. Us folks, that white wave, right?
Yeah.
We can be a huge distraction, right?
That was cool.
Hey, what do you got there? Okay, just, really just throwing off your game plan, right? Those are definitely things which we'll talk about later in the discussion of how that's actually playing out. But yeah, a lot of distractions, a lot of things that can actually take you off into a tangent. So, but want to make sure you guys understand you guys are truly the quarterbacks of the fire service. You guys are making the play calls. And the reality, when we get a little bit more deeper in the discussion, we'll talk a little bit more, about the white wave and things like that. One of the things I've never seen, I've watched a little bit of football, but I've never seen Bill Belichick go and take a snap. He may give some play calls here and there, but the reality matter, the person on the field that can make those decisions quickly, fastly, and get the ball to where it needs to go to get the goal is gonna be that quarterback. And that's one of the things that we'll kind of share and talk about, is that even though there's guidelines and things that, SOPs, SOGs, and direction, you guys are the ones really that are interpreting and actually making those decisions. Make sense? Cool, let's talk a little bit about this, yeah. So the guideline, the purpose of it. What is the reason for this thing? It is simply designed as a reference. Something that your crew, something that you all, something that even folks that are maybe the chief officer can look at and say, hey, look, this is what we want to do. These are our goals. It is a reference from the bottom all the way up to the top that we want to be able to reference and look at and say, hey, look, if we have this situation, these might be the things that we might want to do. It's also designed as a fireground basic framework, right? It's a basic framework. Please understand, as a guideline, there's so much more. As we talked about earlier, there's no way we can get every situation in there. Basic framework. Does that make sense a little bit? Just a basic framework. It's also designed for fireground symmetry, so that when we're on a fireground, things just work smoother. We all know the song. We all know what steps to do it. If you're doing a 1-2 step, for those of you guys that dance, right? You got any dancers in the room? No, nobody? You cut a rug? Okay, I know Sonny could go a little bit. He throwing that kilt, man, he got it, boy. The other thing is striving for seamless fireground operations between agencies. And there again, we are closer than we've ever been before. Does that make sense? We are working together more and more. If we all kind of have the same mindset, the same goals, the same thoughts of what should be done, things will be a lot more seamless. Last but not least, think about best practices. This is a best practice. That's what it is. It's a best practice. All things being equal, 3-2 in the park, we should probably do this. Best practice. Good with that? So when I looked at this little slide here, it's like, this is going to be awesome. When I was doing it on my computer, we put it up on the big screen. Not so much. Yeah. So with that being said, let's go to page. I believe this is on page 2. Page 2 of your document. So, page 2, let's talk about shared goals. Shared goals on page 2. Get the page right. You guys see that list of shared goals? Yeah.
We talked about.
Chiefs agree that, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Go with that terminology. Chiefs agree that. So if you guys would, take a few seconds, a few moments, kind of read over those shared goals, or Chiefs agree that. Read that page a little bit, and see if there's anything in there that you say, oh, this is stupid. Oh, we'd never do that. I can't believe they're asking that. Something that gives you heartburn. Just take a little bit of time, just read over that and see if these ideologies, these thoughts, these mindsets actually work and make sense. So let's talk about them a little bit. So, well, the first one says, put water on the fire. Water on the fire makes everything better. So that's one of the statements up there. And that is the truth. You know, if you think about that little comedian you talked about, the guy pulls up, what do you want to do? I want you to put water on the fire, right? Really, that is the basis of what we do. If we put water on fire, fire goes out, makes everything better, right? If we actually get quick, aggressive fire attack, water on the fire will go out. The mindset has changed over the years. Maybe years ago, it used to be, hey, look, what we want to try and do is get our civilians or our victims out from the threat. Now what we're doing is taking the threat away from the people. And we do that by putting water on the fire. Put the damn thing out, everything's going to be better. Anybody got issues with that statement? Anybody got issues with that thought? Does anyone kind of pretty much agree? Put water on the fire? Good shared goal, ideology, mindset? Cool. Next one talks about is gallons per minute, right? Gallons per minute. One of the things it talks about in the statements that you guys just read is that, hey, look, put the right amount of water on the fire, right? And we've seen video after video after video after video on YouTube or whatever you might have been looking at, where crews have rolled up, either short-staffed or whatever, but pulled a line and put water, good amount of GPMs on fire, and it darkened down and allowed time for the cavalry to get there, right? Good GPMs. I think it's Kirk Isaacson actually talks about gallons per second. He talks about gallons per second and how effective it is when you put a good amount of GPMs on fire, how much knockdown you get, right? How much fire you can put out with a good and the proper amount of GPMs. One of the things it talks about there is that it's not dependent on how much staffing you have. It's not dependent on how much of a water supply you have. Heck, if you got to dump your tank on it and then move your apparatus out of the way for the next truck to get there to actually put more water on it, do that. But putting a knock on a fire is going to make a big difference. It's going to make a huge difference to the outcome of that fire. Any issues or problems with that? You guys agree with GPMs work? GPMs help? Right? I know years ago it used to be like, yeah, you don't have water supply, drop down to 95 GPMs. No, don't do that. Give it all you got, right? Hit it with big punches. Other thing it talks about, allow folks to search searchable spaces. As ICs, as the quarterbacks, right? Assign folks to do search or let them do search. We've got highly capable, well-trained folks that know what they're doing. They can make that call, that delineation of this is tenable and that's not tenable. Give them search and let them do it. Does that make sense? Right? Trust our folks. Trust our folks. We don't need to be on the radio. Hey, look, I want you to go search the Alpha Bravo corner. Once you get done with that room, go to the Charlie Delta. If that's all good, I want you to go. Come on, man. Trust our folks to do the job that they do. Does that make sense? Allow them to determine what's searchable and what's not. Is everybody okay with that thought? Trust our folks. Another thing I want to talk about, I gotta get a little closer because it's in yellow, I can't see it. Primary search needs to be completed within 10 minutes. Primary search should be completed within 10 minutes. Aggressive fire attack with hose lines inside the structure and aggressive primary searches. Maximum time should be 10 minutes before that primary search is done. And this is where we're talking about more of a residential structure versus actually some, big box or some, huge, multi-family type deal. But on residential's 10 minutes should be the maximum time getting that primary search done. Anybody have an issue with that? I know we've done some, in our own particular house at Iona, we've looked at some things and we say, hey man, you guys did a cake behind job on getting this done as far as getting your aggressive line in there. You guys got coordinated ventilation, that was awesome. You threw ladders. But then when we looked at the time before we said, hey look, we had it all clear, it was 20 minutes. That's unacceptable. That's a long time in a 3-2 to before you get it all clear. We kind of dropped the ball on it. If you think about the mindset and the mentality of why we do this job, what is the number one thing people say? I'm here for them, right? And part of being here for them is actually getting a good strong line in there, putting water on the fire, and getting that primary search done. Gotta get in there, maximum time 10 minutes. Does anybody think that's too long? Too little? Everybody good? Y'all tough crowd this morning, but y'all tough this morning. Talk back to it, brother, talk back to it, brother, help me out. And the last, one of the other things we want to talk about is actually, building's not clear until we say it's clear. We've heard this here recently and over a number of years. Regardless of what information comes to leak control, regardless of what information comes to us from the curb saying, hey look, everyone's out. It's not clear until us as firefighters say it's clear, right? Because there's studies upon studies, there's actually examples upon examples, when sometimes people didn't know there was someone in the house, sometimes people go back in when the folks know that they're out, right? Things can happen. So it's not clear until what? We as the fire service, we as firefighters say it's clear. I love my law enforcement brothers, we're strong, I love them. However, until a firefighter says it's clear because they've done a good primary search, it's not clear. Does everybody agree with that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gotta be us that makes that call, right? Gotta be us. Last three things here we want to talk about is do not sacrifice critical fireground operations assigning a RIT team. Somewhere along the line in our culture, it came up, we got to get RIT, and RIT became the thing. Our second dude was like RIT, right? We got active fire and the thing's going, and I want you to be the RIT team. Got 4 people sitting on a yellow tarp, right? Why? Because that was the thing. All right, let's change the culture and the mindset is that, hey look, RIT is important because RIT is designed for us. But what is the reason why we're here? We're here for them. So with that being said, if we're here for them, we need to make sure we don't sacrifice folks that can be doing good work to do it. The further thing they got to realize is that NPA 1710 supports this theory. On your first alarm, 1710 says this, you only need 2 people as a RIC, a IRIC, just 2 people, right? On the second alarm is when you're required to have a full-on RIT. Does that make sense? So initially on that first alarm, use your folks to get work done. Putting the fire out makes everything better. Primary search within 10 minutes. Cool. Next one talks about choose the right point of entry, closest entry point for aggressive attack. Kind of relating a little bit more to the commercial structures, right? It makes sense to figure out, hey, this is the best place to pull this line versus actually having some crazy long stretch, having to make extensions and all this because we were in the wrong spot. The front door is not always the best place. Everybody good with that? All right? So far, so good? You guys in agreement? Y'all got some amens coming? Awesome, good, good, good. So the last thing we want to talk about. More resources are better than not enough. More resources are better than not enough. Call the second alarm. And as it says on the PowerPoint, if you could see it, you'll see that says it's not shameful. There again, culturally, in our fire service, I don't know where this came from. Somewhere along the line, we started getting our egos and our little silos and whatever else going, where we had an issue with calling a second alarm. If you called a second alarm, you had neighboring departments like, oh, these guys can't handle their business, they don't know how to fight fire. Where the hell did that come from in our culture? Where did this come from? Right? More resources are better than not enough. Why are we killing folks trying to get the job done because we're afraid to call a second alarm because of what? Oh, they're going to talk about us. Are we kidding? Is this what we come to? What's the reason why we say we're here? We're here for them. Call the second alarm because they need it, not us. Does that make sense a little bit? Call for their benefit. Somewhere along the line, we've got to roll that mindset in our culture, in the fire service culture in this county, that calling a second alarm is a bad thing. What it should be shameful if you don't call the second alarm. We should talk, on Facebook or talk to our brothers, you know what? Dude, why don't you call the second alarm on that? You needed it. This guy was going on his third bottle trying to go in there, he's dead dog tired. Let's be real about it. Call the second alarm, get more resources, and let's get the job done quickly and efficiently and effectively to take care of the folks that we're here for. Does that make sense? So let's change the culture, man. Let's change the culture. There's nothing wrong with calling for additional alarms. We need the resources. So with those shared thoughts, those mindsets, those ideologies that the county fire chiefs agree with, how do you guys feel about those? Sound okay? You guys kind of agree with that?
You can always turn around.
Was that right?
You can always turn around.
That's it. That's it.
Put them in staging.
Put them in staging. Level 2 staging. If I need you, you know, it's the old adage, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Does that make sense? Get the folks there, man. I don't know about you, when it comes to my personal life, I'd rather have more money in my bank than not enough. I've lived both lives. I prefer to have more. I'm just saying, all right? Get some things done. Everybody good with that so far? Sorry to be so preachy on that. Sorry to be so preachy on that, but we believe in what we believe in, right? All right, so this is going to be on page, I want to say this is page 3. Is this page 3? Talking about incident command, or is this page 11? This might be page 11. Somebody check out page 11. You think about the third day to have these actually memorized, but I'm just not that smart. What page? Page 11, page 11. All right, so this gets to be a quick little review about incident command. A quick review about incident command found on page 11. So, of course, what it's saying here is that if you actually just have one unit, all right, so engine 61 on scene, you guys don't need to really establish a formal command because it's just your unit. Make sense? So it's kind of informal. You guys do your deal. It's all good. But it further goes on to say if you actually have 2 or more companies, 2 or more units working together, you and the battalion chief, you and a couple more engines working together, that's when we want to actually hit a formal command. A formal command. And then your designation will be based upon your location. If we had an incident here, Fort Myers, or I say Southwest Florida Fire Command, or what do you call it, Michigan Avenue Command. Sometimes you can call it by the street, sometimes you call it by the locations, apartment complex, Bay Harbor Command, right? Something that relates to that incident, because the reality is, in this county, there could be multiple incidents working at one time. Even sometimes in your own backyard, right? Where Bonita actually has 2 incidents working, we want to make sure we designate which one is which, right? Is that cool with that? So-and-so command. The other thing is get a TAC channel. Let's be honest. Get a damn TAC channel. How many times have you been on a call on dispatch 3, dispatch 2, whatever dispatch you're rolling on, and somebody has all this chitter chatter going, right? I got important communication to say. I'm trying to get my dispatch from lead control, and y'all talking about, well, come around to the back of the structure, you'll see that there's a big tree, on that tree there's a bird box, and once you get past that, come on man, get a TAC channel, right? It's gotten to that point where it's gotten so bad, right, where dispatch is just saying, TAC 4, they tell you get a damn TAC channel. Allow other people to talk on the dispatch channels like they're supposed to, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're correct.
Right.
It really doesn't happen that much anymore,
Yeah, we're getting better, right?
but it used to a lot, yeah.
Get a TAC channel, right? Cool with that? You see the note, they'll just pop up, TAC 5. Move your behind to a TAC channel. I won't say something else, right? Right. So when you guys get an incident, formal command, who you are, grabbing a TAC channel, getting work done. Everybody good with that?
Everybody knows your voice.
Yep. So one of the things also too is also we'll talk about tiers. You want to talk about tiers?
Sure. I'm not sure where you want me to start, but usually by a second alarm, you probably should be going to a tier, or if you're asking for any kind of strike team or a task force, that way you can break it out. There's so much. If you ever listen to a TAC channel where you just hear non-stop, and sometimes there's information that needs to get passed from somebody to somebody and it can't be done. But if you break out into those tiers, then you have tons of channels.
And they'll dispatch
And we'll
control.
monitor
I
it.
only have one radio.
I know.
Yeah.
I know the problem. One of those big fires, yeah.
Tell Wolf to give up on his, right? So one of the things that you want to do is also too, is once you get that tier, we want to make sure as a county we understand this, is that once you get that tier, that first operation where everyone will land will be that first channel. So if you get tier 2, 21 is where we're going to be doing our initial operation. And then you can actually assign 22, 23, and so forth. If they actually say, hey, look, you guys are going tier 3, we all should know that, hey, look, we're going to 31 to start our operation. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah.
And that's just something from an ICC, as well as passing down to our youngest firefighter. Hey, look, if we get a tier, this is where you go first, initially. And we do have a radio communication class going to be coming here soon, so we can all kind of figure out. Because we do radio communication training on two things, right? All right, when we do co-ops and when we have brush fires. You have the guy. Right, you have to go through with them.
Feel free to use it
how
on
to
a
do the challenge.
lesser event too, if you want to practice with your people. Use it on just something basic. I mean, geez, do it on a fire alarm where you know it's all safe.
Yeah.
That way everybody can practice going to the channels and the communication. We don't mind at all. There's tons of them sitting there.
Really?
Yeah, they never get used.
All right.
Training and all that is a great opportunity to do it.
And it's good training for us.
Yeah.
We
Make
have
sure you
tons of new
include
dispatchers all the
talk
time.
around channels too, because we,
Yeah.
in South Trail, we use that a lot on certain buildings that we just can't
Right.
communicate with each other. We've been using that a lot, actually.
Yeah, talk
Even
about-
our own guys, so what tier we going and all that, so it's like they constantly have to be reminding them, go to a certain tier.
And that's one of the things we want to talk about, was talk
So
around
we're
channels,
doing-
and also with the repeaters and things
Yeah.
like that coming out, just to make sure everyone in the county, since we are playing together more, are working together, so. And we will talk about that at, as more time comes and get that information out as far as communications. So, let's talk about modes of operations. So as a county, we want to look at three modes of operation, three modes of operation. The three that we have is going to be investigative, offensive, and defensive. Investigative is basically gonna be if there's no indicators of fire, right? Then nothing's showing. That means we're gonna be in investigative mode, right? Offensive is gonna be that, just that, right? Aggressive, hard line, stretch to the door, getting fire knocked out, coordinated ventilation, primary search being done, got ladders thrown up, checking, we're on it. That's offensive, man. We're in this fight, we're getting this thing done. We're kicking that fire's tail. Defensive is gonna be that of what? Basically, maybe the structure's not safe, maybe we don't have enough staffing. Initially, we're gonna be defensive, trying to put water on the outside to the fire, protecting structures and so forth, right? And just keep in mind is that any of these modes can shift at any time. We may initially start off with an investigative mode, man, we found it, let's get to offensive. Or we may start off with defensive mode because of staffing or something of that nature, and now we wanna go offensive once the cavalry's actually arrived, right? And then again, it could be an offensive fire, we're getting good, whatever, it's not working out for us, the structure becomes unsafe, let's back out and let's go defensive, right? So all three of those modes are interchangeable depending on what your situations are, but those could be the three modes that we wanna operate in. Cool with that? You guys already kinda doing those three?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about investigative mode. I think, is this on page 12? It's on page 12 possibly? Talks a little about investigative mode, or is that still on page? Oh, still on page 11, okay. Help a brother out here.
Yeah.
Still on page 11. So there's actually a little bit of conversation in the document that speaks to investigative mode. So if you're in investigative mode, there's some choices that you guys have as ICs and also as far as your units, right? So if they're in investigative mode, you can very easily say, engine 11 is going to be in investigative mode, we'll be checking the structure. Or if you so choose, your choice, you can say engine 11 is on scene, we're investigative mode, will be recon, right? So it's your choice as far as what you want to call yourself, either by your continue with your unit or continue with, or give yourself a new assignment saying that we'll be recon. It's kind of captured in that document. However, what is fixed is once you get a function or task, you become that. So engine 11 will be in offensive mode, will be attack. From that point on, that person or that crew will be called attack, correct? Because once that's established, we're in offensive mode, we're attack. If someone were to say engine 11, who are they speaking to? They're speaking to the engineer on the rig, right? Yeah, so on there. Most of the time, the front of the house, right, is gonna be the alpha side. Not always, but most of the time, right? So command will actually determine, hey, this is the alpha side. And then everything else correlates to that. And then when we start talking about sides, it should be on the Charlie corner or the Charlie Delta corner, and speaking that nature, right? Since we all can have good location, because I know, like here, east, west, and all this other stuff sometimes doesn't play out when you're doing laps around the structure.
That would also be considered a division, though, right?
What's that?
Division or?
Yeah, so depending on the size of your incident, you could actually have it expanded where, you got, let's say you have a huge big box store. You may say, hey, alpha, you may actually assign maybe a ops or soup or whatever to work on the alpha side, and you start getting to brush fires, yes, you could actually call that a division or work area. Good with that? Next is gonna be passing and transferring command, all right? Passing and transferring. There is a difference between passing and also transferring command. So passing typically, passing will be when that first due engine arrives, right? They're the only officer on scene that can do the 360. That person's gonna establish command and accountability and all this other stuff that we have as a spill that we say, right? So that person's in command. There's work to be done. There's active fire. There's smoke coming. We know we need to get a line stretched in there. It's only 3 people on the rig. You got an engineer, officer, and maybe a firefighter, right? So we wanna make an interior attack. That person can pass command to the next incoming unit. That's passing command. Why? Because we're going interior, right? So I'm passing command to that individual. Hey, we're gonna be attacked. You guys can be searched. Going in, gonna knock the fire out. Just pass command. Essentially what we wanna do is actually try to, if we can, only pass command once. We don't have to keep passing command, right? Does that make sense? Whereas transferring command is gonna be what? A face-to-face between whoever that initial company officer was, or a write-up, and say, hey, look, this is what we got with this, and now we're transferred command to that IC. Does that make sense a little bit? So passing and transferring.
In a perfect world, it's face to face.
In a perfect world, it's face-to-face. In a perfect world. Which sometimes is not our world, right? But in a perfect world, we want to try to do a nice face-to-face. This is what we have, this we're doing. Now we get to go to work because command has now been transferred.
And so many times I've seen where an engine will show up, establish command and accountability, but the battalion's like literally 30 seconds behind it.
Right.
They see everything that the initial engine sees. So
Right.
that's more of a pass, don't even really communicate it. It's just,
Right.
you know, battalion, whatever's got command now.
Passing them because they're, yeah, like I said, they're right there.
Right.
And you're going in to do work. You already know you're going to be attacked or whatever that particular designation is based upon that. Is everybody cool with that? Let's talk staging. Staging. So level 1 staging is what? What is level 1 staging?
On scene where you can.
Oh, see? Now you're good, Diane. You're part of the group, Diane. Don't cover your mouth. You're part of the group, right? You're part of the group. All right. So level 1's gonna be on scene, right? We're doing level 1 staging. That's done on scene. What is level 2 staging? Designated location, a block away, 35 minutes out, right? So when would you think level 2 might be advantageous? What's that?
Second one.
Second alarm, right? Second alarm. A commercial structure that you're in investigative mode, right? Because we're still trying to figure out where it is. I don't want you to see this yet because we may have to go all the way completely to the other side of the structure. Just chill out a second, let's figure out what we got, and then y'all come
We
in.
do that on alerts. We got aircraft coming in with an
Right.
issue, statistically.
For sure. Just get you here,
Right.
and once we figure out, yeah. Right. That's awesome.
Station.
These gas stations down there. Level 2 station out there. Level 2 station at the station.
We start doing that on the radio.
Yeah. Level 2 staging. We all know what that translation
We'll go
means.
level
Close
3.
enough.
We'll go full level 3.
Everybody good with that so far, as far as just a review of incident command? Let's talk a little bit 1710, NPA 1710. Basically, let's talk about the alarm assignments. There again, if you guys have an opportunity, just pull that up online as far as NPA 1710. This is the interpreted version of it. So 1710 says this: we should establish command, right? Establish command. It also says that we should have a water supply of 400 GPMs for 30 minutes. We should have 2 attack lines with 300 GPM total between them. 2 attack lines, 300 GPM. I think most agencies now are well above that, either flowing 160 or 165 or so with one particular line. Of course, obviously, support members on each line. You should have enough folks on the line. Folks that will actually catch a hydrant and do forceful entry as needed. Search team with at least 2 firefighters on it. We have a truck team to actually be able to do ladder and vent work. We're not talking rural there, we're talking about more municipal. And of course, aerial must have an operator. And what we spoke about earlier, NPA 1710 says this: on the first alarm, all you're required to have is an IRIC, 2 folks. On a full second alarm, we need to actually have a RIT set up, a full RIT. Everybody go with that? We'll say it again, don't sacrifice critical folks when there's work to be done. Good so far? Everybody okay? Tracking all right? So this one I think is actually going to be found on page 5. I want to call this 5, which talks about alarm assignments. 3, or actually I can make this page 3. I should have wrote these pages down. Page 3 probably, right? Page 3. Page 3, it starts talking about, speaking about what you get on an alarm. And we want to actually open up space because basically it says the first alarm will vary based upon call type. This one, Diane, if you want to kind of help us out a little bit as far as some of the coding, 69 Echo, some of these other different types, how it actually works as far as how the alarm is actually developed and what is actually dispatched.
Yeah, sure. We have different call types. Charlie would be, something in the oven or an extinguished fire. Delta would be somebody saying, I see smoke from behind the house, it could be the house. Maybe they're burning in the backyard, we're gonna err on the side of safety, and we're gonna go with a structured fire, that'll be a Delta. If somebody says, oh my God, my neighbor's house is on fire, I see flames and smoke coming out of the windows, we're gonna automatically do that in Echo, and it's gonna get dropped in seconds. And then at the Echoes, we'll do the 4 engines, a ladder, battalion chief, and then EMS.
And you guys have probably seen on some of these dispatches now where it's just a single engine dispatch, because that's probably like a Delta, is that a?
No, that would be like an extinguished oven fire, somebody had their self-cleaning oven on, that
Yeah.
half the people don't realize those things smoke. Yeah, something really minor.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people question you guys when you
Yes.
know, like the battalion, be like, you're only sending one engine, and you said that's what it's.
Yeah, that's what the Bugles
Yeah,
decided
yeah.
on for everyone.
That's what
They
you
should
should
let us know
You
that.
should tell your boss
Yeah.
decided that.
Yeah.
They should
That's
let
why,
us know
when
that.
we
They're
first
only
started this,
sending
that's
one
why
engine.
we had a lot of the self-dispatch going on
Yeah.
Correct.
in our departments, where we were sending full complement and stuff, but now, I mean, even, you tell your guys, look, they're going through the questions, and
Yeah.
We got the email yesterday about
Yeah.
only one engine for
And I like
one.
that.
They do.
I think it's
Yeah.
good.
And that's part of the training. I think that's sort of like December 1st.
Yeah.
I think somewhere
I
around
think
December
so,
1st, somewhere
I'm
around
not really
there.
good with timelines, it was recent.
Yeah, so it's a recent change somewhat, but yeah, it's good information for us to know, right?
Yeah.
As you make those calls, but it does make sense. So how many times have we sent the cavalry, for electrical outlet on fire, all right? So
Yeah,
most of us, I've actually had, tone at the house. I'm Wayne Gateway, like, man, I gotta get to Diona, man. I get the tone at the house and I start looking at my notes. Oh, man, come on, man, I'm going back to bed, right? Why? Because it's nothing that we know that one engine can take care of. So I think as a county, it makes sense. We're trying to do better, and it makes sense as far as the code typing of it and what gets dispatched to it. But there again, it's something that you all as the quarterbacks of the station should know.
Because I don't want to win, calling me going, where's everybody else?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, it depends what kind of fire it is,
Right,
but
but
yes.
it's like if it was something arcing, they could say, oh, it's getting worse, and you would say, all right,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
gonna upgrade this.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what you'll see every once in a while on your notes, I'm receiving numerous calls too.
Yes.
Because if everybody's calling,
Yep.
that's real. If we're getting one call on a structure fire on
Yeah,
41,
somebody calls you.
yeah.
Right.
There's smoke coming from the outback on 41, or,
Yeah.
or whatever,
The smoking pit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
smoke, we know exactly what it is. And so to also go along with that, just to make sure everybody else is aware, is when they have something that comes in, I believe it's a 6.9 echo, where it sounds like a structure fire, they said they're dropping tones immediately for us to get going, and then they'll start adding in our notes and communicate to us if they figure out, oh, this is nothing. They'll start trying to communicate that, and then we can always, put the response down. But I think it's great that we actually can get out of the house quicker. It's a great system, I believe. So, question? Everybody good with that? So for the rest of this particular lecture, we're talking about our 6.9 echoes. We're talking about those confirmed fires of what we get. Everybody cool with that? So as we start talking in the lecture, this is what we're talking about. This is a confirmed smoke and flames. We got fire. What are we gonna get? So for our number one alarm, we'll have 4 engines. We'll have an aerial unit, 1 BC, and 1 EMS. The difference is if you're actually typed as a rural entity, on your first alarm, instead of getting an aerial device, you'll get a tender. You'll get a tender. Does that make sense? You gotta think, hey, look, man, I'm out on the shores, man, there ain't nothing, no high rises out here. I need water, right? Or wherever it might be. So that's actually already kind of be predetermined, what is actually kind of considered municipal, what is actually considered rural. So on a municipal, you get the 4 engines, 1 aerial, BC, EMS. Second alarm, one thing you'll notice is that, wait a minute, it's not the same as it used to be. Initially, before December 1st, is what? 3 engines. Then your second alarm was duplicated with 3 more engines. So what happened is, more resources are better. That first alarm is actually staffed with more units. Essentially what happened is we robbed that second alarm engine and put it onto the first alarm. Because one of the things we saw with co-op and some other incidents is what? We get on that first alarm, we don't have enough units to assign tasks to. So let's give you more engines initially, so that when it's hard and heavy really early, you can assign critical work to be done, and then if we need a second alarm, we actually will have 2 more engines, another additional aerial, a BC, and of course, obviously, another EMS. If you're rural, you'll get another tender instead of actually having another aerial place. Does that make sense a little bit? So you're kind of front-loaded on that first alarm. And of course, obviously, the third alarm, 2 engines, aerial, INT, of course another tender if you're actually rural. 4th alarm, 2 engines, 1 aerial, you see where it's going. And of course, obviously, if you jump alarms, I'm on my first alarm. I get up there as the quarterback of the fire service, as an IC battalion chief, and I see, oh my gosh, this is bad. I'm on my first alarm, give me a 3rd alarm, because this thing's bad. I need help. You will get the full complement of the first alarm, full complement of the 2nd alarm, and full complement of the 3rd alarm. Does that make sense? So on the radio, you don't have to actually call it all out. And of course, the question came up, I think on day 1, was like, how many alarms can this county actually handle? And the answer was 5 alarms before regional assets. Now, with 5 alarms, that's gonna be stressing on the county, let's just be real. But in essence, depending on staffing, depending on who's up, depending who's training, depends who's out of town, essentially 5 alarms the county can handle before we start having to go to regional assets. Make sense? Cool. So one of the things we also want to talk about is actually going to be map coverage, but the other thing, there again, going back to one of the other statements, is if you need to, it's not shameful, call what? Additional alarms. Call for second alarms. We're changing the culture, changing the mindset. But to go along with calling those alarms is going to be MAC. MAC is going to be minimal acceptable coverage, as you guys know. And that MAC is actually set up for your particular agencies, your operations folks, or whoever might have been internally has gotten with lead control and says, hey, this is the coverage we want for our particular district. And based upon that, that is what dispatch or lead control is going to backfill your stations with, right? Your MAC, right? And I'm trying to say MAC more than MAC coverage, right? Because MAC coverage is actually kind of redundant. The C is actually coverage when we say MAC, right? It's tough, man, it's tough, man. It's a tough world out there, right? So when you call for MAC, it's going to give you minimal acceptable coverage established by your organization. And of course, lead control, all you have to do is just say activate MAC and make it happen.
Most of the time, you've already done it.
Yeah.
And have you guys been seeing that more and more often, where they're actually just taking care of us?
Or they'll ask you.
Yeah, yeah, kind of prompt you.
Prompt you, yeah.
Because I'm quite sure they're on their consoles like, yeah, they gonna need MAC coverage on this, you know, let me just go and help a brother out and say, hey, you guys want MAC? Yeah, give me MAC, and next thing you know, they start moving up. One of the things we need to talk about is also too, internally, externally, what MAC kind of means. For us, it is so much simpler for everyone involved, if we don't try to a la carte alarms, right? You get that first alarm, got 4 engines, 1 aerial, your BCs and stuff coming. If you think you need more resources, don't try to a la carte it. Hey, have me have a engine 74 come up and let me get that. Don't do that, you're screwing things up. Just call for MAC coverage, or call for MAC. Just call for MAC. Because if you call for MAC, dispatch will be able to look at the AVLs and give you what you need and also be able to take care of the backfilling of the stations a lot easier than you trying to stress yourself out as far as what unit you have available. Because as you're going to that structure fire, going to TAC 4, there may have been another incident where that unit that you're requesting is already on a call. So now you further complicated it. Now you made their job harder because now one of the things that happens on their console, I'll let you explain this, is that when you call for another unit, it actually is automatically in their system creating a second alarm. So you want to talk a little about how that process works?
Yeah, and we are getting a new CAD, so there's things that aren't quite working as well. This CAD is like 20 years old. So by fall, you're gonna love it. You will love it. But right now, in most districts, it does work. If your 4 engines go and then another one self-dispatches to it, when we pull up that second, the CAD realizes that, so they'll only give you one more, and then your ladder and your command staff and EMS.
And then they have to actually realize, hey, look.
We have to realize, which one it is and take one out.
Right, it makes their job harder, right? So we as ICs can say, hey, look, I need more resources, activate MAC, and they'll take care of it for you. Make sense? So please do that, get a tax channel.
And we use Cape Coral too a lot. All those districts that are near Cape Coral, we have tons of trucks. Tons. So we borrow from them.
Go up the river, bring them over the bridges.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing also that goes along with MAC internally, we need to have this discussion, is that when you get dispatched for MAC, hey, engine so-and-so, we need you to be MAC coverage for this particular district. Internally, not being guilty of it, internally, that is not the time to be like, I gotta go to MAC coverage. All right, let me go to the refrigerator and get my food. All right, let me go get my workout gear. Let me go do this. No, the reason why they're calling for MAC is because there's a hole of coverage somewhere in our county. We need you to actually be able to get there for coverage. MAC is important. We don't need to go 1018, but we need to move expeditiously, right? We need you to get your stuff, get on your rig, and get going to that particular area. Why? Because there's nobody covering it. Does
We'll
that make sense?
backfill your stations.
Yeah, yep.
If it leaves you short, we'll backfill.
Yep, and it's kind of like a county shift, you know, so if there's an incident, let's say, you know, at Iona, right? More than likely, South Trail's gonna pull in. More than likely, Lehigh's gonna pull into South Trail. More than likely, the city's gonna come in, so it's a shift, right? And a lot of times, I think the AVL will pull those MAC units, because example, if they call a first alarm, right? Right, they may call for MAC coverage, they start coming in, now they're calling for a second alarm. Those individuals that were going to MAC, more than likely, will probably be the ones that actually come to the event. Why? Because they're closer on the AVL. And then there'll be a further shift of county resources. Does that make sense? That's even more reason why we should be moving to get in position, just in case they need you for the big show. Does that make sense a little bit? So talk to our folks, talk to our peeps. Hey man, get MAC, man. Let's get
Yeah,
there.
let them know
Let's
they might
get
be there a while too, especially with the
Yeah.
new decom stuff coming out.
Exactly.
Listen, guys, we get back to the station, you know, they
Right.
all wanna haul ass back to their quarters, I understand that, but.
So one of the things that we're doing in our particular agency, just throwing it out there, a little sidebar, is we're getting the go bags, or suggesting you have a go bag. You know, put your little granola bars, put your little workout stuff already in your bag that you put on your truck. So this way, regardless of what you gotta get done, brush fire, this or that, you're already set up. You ain't gotta scramble around. You got your stuff that you need. Preparation's key. Initially, when it first came out, that's the blessing and the glory of this, kind of doing this way, where you get impact and feedback from the folks that are actually doing it. You know, because sometimes you can sit up in your office with your post-it notes and your clipboards and your paper clips and say, this is how we should do things. But really, the conversation should be coming from the folks that are actually doing it. Because we all know with our SOGs and SOPs, things have come out to us, we're like, okay, this is great, but it doesn't work, right? So we need that feedback from folks that are actually doing it to say, hey, look, this is good or this is not good. So I think we're getting really, really close. Obviously, there'll be some improvements that'll be made as you guys actually do it. We've got training next month, got a co-op next month. I think it's 5th, 6th, and 7th, or 6th, 7th, 8th, or whether those days are on that first or second week of February, and we'll get that rolling. So let's talk a little bit about structure fires and strategic goals. I believe this is actually found on page 5 or 4? 3. Or 3. And you start just saying, hey, send your document. Because I am screwing these pages up. So on page 3, we want to start talking about residential structure fires and strategic goals. So on our residential structure fires, there again, getting preachy again. Life safety is going to be the highest priority. Everyone hopefully agrees with that. So we'll go into our residentials. The number one thing we want to do is actually take care of our folks. Life safety, saving lives, saving property. And of course, actually, this objective can be achieved by doing what? Having an aggressive interior fire attack or containment, and then getting a primary search done. Coordinated ventilation go along with that. That is truly what we want to do with residential structure fires. Get on it. Get in there, put the fire out, get the people out, God forbid if they're there. Let's look at some U.S. statistics. A little link, we'll just look at this real quick, just talk about it, just pop in your head, pop in your mind there. But one of the things, these trends in fires, death, and injuries, one of the things that this is actually comparing is 2008 to 2017. This is where the statistics actually come from for this particular slide. So we see our fires are going down by 6.2%. Fires are going down. But one of the things we also see is that our fire deaths are increasing. More people are still dying in homes and residents, right? At 9.6, it's actually up. So why is that? Why is that happening? Your thoughts, your opinions.
Fire, plastic, what's burning.
Yeah, so what the components are, and we know today versus what, you know, start to have that legacy type, legacy home versus, you know, modern home type of communication, but we know today, man, I can go right down to rooms to go, and within 5 minutes, I got this room, that room, that room, my whole house is actually packed full of stuff, probably more stuff than whatever need, right? And that stuff is actually made of what, right? All kind of, you know, polystyrenes, all kind of synthetic fibers, all stuff that's gonna burn hotter, quicker, faster, and so forth. What else are we doing with our building construction, right? Especially here in Florida with hurricanes and things like that, and, you know, trying to keep our light bills down, right? Right, you know, spraying isonine or open or closed cell type foams in our houses, or hurricane windows, things are a lot sealed a little bit tighter than what, man, maybe used to be, right? Right. What else we got going on? Do we have one more distractions inside the home? I think so, right?
Delayed.
Open floor plans,
Open floor plans, right, allow for quicker fire spread and flow, right?
Delay notifications.
Delay notifications, all that, right? So these are all things we have to kind of contend with and deal with it. But knowing that, and knowing that life safety is our highest priority, we have definitely got to make aggressive fire attack and good searches within 10 minutes. We've actually hit on this a lot, but let's kind of go through it again. So residential structure fires, we know we're going to get what? We're going to get 4 engines, so we get 1 aerial, we're going to get a BC, we're going to get an EMS unit. There are some agencies and entities that actually already have kind of pre-built agreements that if we get an event today, hey, BC in the next district, come with us, come play with us. So this way they're essentially unofficially, getting 2 battalion chiefs to actually have to be on scene, all right? And that works out well, especially if the staff officers aren't there and things like that, and they kind of can work together. And that BC can actually be one of the ones that come in, and the second BC can be that one that comes in and possibly be accountability or possibly be that incident safety officer that we want to make sure gets moved in there, okay? And those are kind of informal agreements. We'll talk about it right away. We will. So let's talk about residential structure fires. Residential structure fires. And this is actually still found on page 3. If you guys will take a few minutes for us, and what we want you guys to do is kind of evaluate the document. Evaluate the guideline on page 3. Read over that and look at first due, look at second due, look at third, all the way up to our 5th due and our 2nd BCs to see if that actually jives as far as a sequence. Does this make sense? That first due should probably be looking at doing this. Not saying that always, because there are times when you have a really kick-butt crew that first due may actually take care of second due function just because that's what was presented to them. But just as a sequence, does it make sense to you? Just take a few minutes, kind of read over that, and look at what we're saying in that document to make sure it makes sense. So you guys are reading through that. So far, has there been anything that you guys are reading like, oh, this is absolutely not, this doesn't make sense? Or does it kind of make sense? Does it make sense as far as the flow and sequence of things? And one of the things that we want to do, especially with this guideline, is actually get this to our newest firefighter all the way through the whole organization. Because one of the things we know is that if they know what's going on, or what they should be kind of thinking about, if we're second due, we're probably going to be doing these things. It's just going to make life a little bit easier, especially for you as IC. Not guarantee that that's what's going to happen, but just kind of having in mind that these are the things on the fire ground that should take place. And one of the things that also, too, will also be a help to you as an IC, quarterbacks of the organization, for them to kind of know what you're thinking, right? Or your expectations of them, what they should try to get accomplished. Anything in those documents or those kind of those assignments saying that this will work, not work? And there again, This document has to be considered dynamic, has to be considered gray, because things change all the time. Cool. So we're saying first do get on scene, first do will be attack on a residential structure fire. There again, aggressive, stretching lines, get into that fire area and put the fire out. Second do come in and do some initial truck functions. Third do could be water supply, and we're aware of there's a lot of agencies out there that are doing booster backup. Everyone familiar with booster backup, right? And there again, most of us probably feel as though, hey, look, you can put a lot of fire out with one tank of water, if not having 1,500 gallons to get a lot of work done. First two will be vent, fifth two will be RIT, BC will be instant command, and then there again, that agreement. So, considerations, some thoughts, things to think about, Leave room for the aerial, right? My truckies love this statement, right? Because how often in the county have we actually, as a culture, pulled up to the front of the house and actually just stopped in the front of the house? A lot of it has to do with our apparatus designs. We know crosslays are designed for what? Low staffing and also for direct on-site stretching to the structure. So you park right in front of the house, take that crosslay right directly to the front door, you put the fire out. There are a lot of agencies now, or I should say some agencies now, that are redesigning their systems, redesigning their apparatus where those attack lines come off the rear. Why? Because they want those apparatus to do what? Pass the front of the house, see all three sides, and park and allow room for the aerial. So the attack line comes off the rear to go to the structure, versus some development of those crosslays, which is designed for direct stretches. But leave room for it. What's the old adage? We can stretch hose, but we can't stretch the ladder, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Allow room for that aerial to do work. And you want to actually leave room for it even if you're doing booster backup. One of the thoughts with that is if you're doing booster backup, instead of maybe parking in the rear and actually blocking the front of the house, maybe go to the front of that apparatus and do booster backup that way. So this way we actually have that 3-inch or 2-inch, whatever you guys are using to hook up to share that tank to get that 1,500 GPMs. Maybe the aerial is not the best for water supply if third due. So on a residential structure, you know, if that truck's gonna be that third due unit, maybe you may wanna have the fourth come in and be water supply and let that aerial come directly to the scene. Does that make sense a little bit? Allow that truck to be able to get to do truck work, or that aerial to be able to get to do aerial work. And if water supply is within 100 feet, that's your damn job, okay? So if you're an engineer on the rig and that hydrant's within 100 feet, don't be looking for nobody else to do it. Get your work done, right? Get your continuous supply. Does that sound reasonable? Right? Within 100 feet? Come on, bro. Come on, man. Come on now. Get your own water supply, all right? So just make sure within 100 feet get your stuff. And you as commanders, right, use your rescues to do tasks. So if you look at it, what we've been talking about over these last few minutes, talking about that 69 Echo, there aren't any rescues assigned to that, right? But if you think about it, how many folks here actually send rescues to structure fires, right? Right? There's a few agencies that actually have that. So that's not gonna be along with that. And we had a little discussion yesterday. We talked about when the rescues actually say, hey, add me to that call, right? And I believe as you know, chief officers and all this, if we get added to the call, it's not gonna change anything in dispatch.
No.
But rescues changes minimally, right? But it doesn't actually affect that second alarm.
Right, it will not affect it.
Yeah. Yeah, because one of the conversations I think we had initially was that, hey, look, when a rescue adds themselves, does that change that second alarm and make them have to go manual and have to pull from it? But because rescues are not in any of the alarm assignments, right? So when we call that second alarm, they don't have to look for them on the AVL because they're not assigned anyway. Does that make sense? Right, so it's okay if the rescues actually do add themselves to it. It's not to throw anything else. However, when that engine says, hey, assign me to that call, we all know we've been on that. That unit's actually assigned on that lift assist, right? And they're doing it. Next thing you know, those tones drop for, you know, that structure fire. You know, show engine 61 assignment complete. We're actually going to that fire, right? Or engine center, whatever engine it might be, right? Right? Why? Because we want to get some work in. We want to get some work in. EMS, y'all can handle this, right? You know. However, that does kind of throw things off because now there's a self-dispatch, a freelance, if you will, added to the particular area, right? And I can say right now, our guys do it. I've done it. You know why? Because they want to get that work in. But they'll take care of it. They'll take care of it. All right, so get more units. So this is a prompt, a key of thought to put into your mind as ICs. You should be thinking, hey, I might need more units if we know we have a long leg for water, right? You guys have those areas within that you already know predetermined that water, really stinks in this area. We don't have accessibility to it. Call for more units, right? Because we know if it's going to be a long leg, that may take up a lot of units, maybe 1 or 2 units trying to get water to your scene. So if 4 of your engines are trying to get water, what does that leave you with? 1 engine and a ladder to do work, right? The whole reason to give you 4 engines is what? To have a better efficiency to get things done. Call for more units, right? There's nothing wrong with it. If there's a confirmed victim or victims inside the house, think about calling more units. Why? Because we know if there's actually there's somebody inside that house, it's confirmed, how many units are we going to assign to get that job and that task done? What are we here for? For them, right? We're here for life and property. So it's actually going to take more of your resources to actually get that victim out of there. You may want to have some other units coming to do the other parts of this puzzle that we need, other pieces to get work done. And we already know if there's 1 victim inside, there may be a good chance it might be what? Multiple. Other thing is, of course, obviously just knowing your structures, your layouts, your buildings that you have. We all have our, what do you want to call it, target hazards, or if this house ever catches on fire, man, this is going to be a bad one, all right? Do we have those? Right, you run a medical call there and you walk through this house, you're like, God, dog, they have every issue of magazine and newspaper ever produced by this whole publisher. So just kind of keep in mind as we know where our border houses are, we know those houses, they keep their shutters up year round, right? You guys have seen these guys in the middle of summer, they still got their hurricane shutters up all day year round. So just kind of keep that in mind, of course, burglar bars, those particular areas. So we know that. If we have those type of structures, call more units to come to help you out. Then, of course, obviously, if the fire is not being controlled. Inside, I think we all have an internal gut timer, right? And we imagine in our head, hey, look, they've been inside the structure, they're getting fire knocked down, but things aren't changing, right? The conditions aren't changing. At that particular time, you should be thinking in your gut, hey, I might need to get more resources. This is not as going as easy or smoothly as we may have thought. Does that make sense, right? Because we all know it's like, this should be happening. Why is this not happening? Call for more units because it may actually be a longer day. There again, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Everybody good with residential structure fires? Does that make sense a little bit? Everybody good? Got some amens? Good. Awesome. Let's talk about multifamily residential. Multifamily. That's on page what? I'm not asking now because I've been messing up all morning. It's on page 6. All right, so go to page 6. Now that sounds effective, right? So on page 6, we talk about multifamily residential. And those multifamily residentials, those can be considered what? 4 units or more. 4 units or more. Anything 4 units or more we call multifamily residential. Cool? So multifamily residential, there again, life safety, because folks who live there, is going to be the highest priority. We want to make sure we get on getting the people out. We are here for that. All right, one of the things that's actually going to be different with this is going to be water supply and this statement right here. You want to make sure you check adjacent units for extension, for smoke victims, and also fire. Make sense? That stuff can spread and get around there. So that's going to be a little bit different. As far as our alarm assignments and our sequence of things, for the most part, other than those 2 things, it's going to be pretty much similar to what we talked about on residential structure fire. The first 2 is going to do attack. Second 2 is going to be initial truck functions. Third 2 is going to be water supply, possibly ventilation or checking adjacent units. And the fourth 2 will be second line. And of course, obviously, fifth 2 is going to be RIC, and then of course BC, and then the secondary coming. So you see on the fourth 2 getting a second line, that's different than residential structure fire, isn't it? You guys agree with that? Mm-hmm. And then checking adjacent units on the third 2 is different as well. And there again, with multifamily residentials, there's a little bit of a change there. We want to make sure that we actually get folks checking those units, as well as getting more lines to be able to do more attack work. Does that sound reasonable? Any heartburn about that? You guys good with that? So right now we'll take a little pause and we'll talk about the elephant in the room. Talk about the white wave. Let's talk about the white wave. Let's talk about us chief folks that come get in your middle of your stuff, right? So I think culturally, somewhere along the line, it's gotten to the point where, most ICs hear all these chief officers come and they're like, oh gosh. Why? Because, white wave comes and everything slows down, everything gets chaotic and all that. So one of the things as far as training and mentality and changes is most of us as them, because I am one, right, are trying to do a better job of not being in your hair. Number one, park that SUV, that truck, or Expedition, what the hell y'all be driving now, Tahoe, park it out the way, right? We don't need that chief officer in front of the house, right? Don't need it, right? Does that make sense? The other thing is not taking the scene away from you guys, because that's what you guys get paid to do. You guys are the ICs, right? We are in the world of Excel spreadsheets and paper clips and all this other stuff, policies and all that. That's what we do. Or should be, right? Right? But you guys are the ones that are experienced. You guys know your crews better than we do. You guys are making those play calls. There again, Bill Belichick is not taking snaps, right? He may give direction early on, hey, make this play call, but once you guys get there and see it, I see you, Salter, but once you guys see it, right? It's not Bill Belichick, it's you guys as the quarterbacks doing the job. Does that make sense? So one of the things we're talking as White Waves, as Chiefs, is to allow you guys to do your job. When we get on scene, coming to you, hey, what do you need? How can I help you? Safety? Cool, I'll go be safety. Hey, what do you need? Accountability? I got you. To help you out to do your job, right? To do what you guys do. That is the goal and that's the mindset. With that type of cultural type of situation, things will probably go a lot better, right? If we allow you guys to do what you do, right? So that's something that we, as chief officers, have to get better at, right? So it shouldn't be a cringe if you have, so-and-so coming, so-and-so coming. It should be a cringe. It should be like, okay, cool, because I'm gonna have them do this, I'm gonna have them do that. Does that make sense? Hey, South Trail, how y'all doing? All right, so that's some things to kind of think about, right? I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. That's on take two.
It's true.
We'll edit that out, right? But this is a reality. This is a reality that we want to make sure things change, right? Because we want to be as effectively and efficiently as we can, even from that top chief officer, to make sure we're here for them and taking care of business, right? So it's been identified. We're working on it. We're working on it. So some considerations, they'll be pretty much the same, right? They'll be pretty much the same. Leave room for the aerial, especially for a multifamily residential, right? You guys agree with that? Especially if it's one that actually has a couple divisions, right? It's got 2 stories. Want to have the ability to be able to do truck work. Want to make sure that you're doing booster backup. Want to make sure that aerial may not be the best, especially for these multifamily residentials. 100 feet, that's your damn job, right? And of course, obviously utilize your rescues to actually do work. Cool with that? As far as considerations, as far as want to get more units, those are the same. Right there again, if we have a long lane, got confirmed victims, right? If we know that this is going to be one of our target hazards, or they have hurricane shutters, burglar bars, or some other obstacle that we have to overcome, get more units coming. And especially on these, if you're not actually getting in control with that first line, or that second line that you had coming off that fourth view, hopefully you got more units coming, right? Because we don't want to burn the whole damn thing down, right? Talk about commercial structures. So commercial is going to be a little bit different. Everybody go with residential and multifamily? Any heartburn, issues, problems? Good? So our commercial stuffs are big boxes. So we know just from the outset, we know this. We know that on a residential and a multifamily, they are great at showing us their hand. This is what it is. We'll see, flames, we'll see smoke. We pretty much know it's on the Alpha Bar corner. We can set up our play calls and do what we got to do, right? Residential structure fires, multifamily, typically show us what it has going on. Commercials, not so much. Commercials, a lot of times, we got to figure out what their hand is and actually be able to make our attacks based upon that, right? Estero, I believe, was you guys that actually had the Michael Kors fire, I believe it was, right? My understanding of that situation is this, that the IC went to one side, didn't see much. Whatever crew went around, I think it was to the rear, saw a lot of flames or smoke showing there, so they were able to see it by going around. So with commercial, what we're saying with the commercial, the number one priority that we want to do that is actually find out where it is. Find out where it is and what you have, right? We know if it's a big box store, let's say a Target or something like that, right, it's probably not going to show you a whole lot initially. If it is, you damn sure better be calling more units. All right, that's when you jump alarms. Give me a third alarm. All right, if you got that much flame and smoke coming from the big boxes. Because most of the time that container's so big, right, it's not going to actually show you exactly what's happening until you actually go in and investigate. So for commercial structures, find out where it is, find out what the extent of it is, and then make your plans off of that. So that's going to be a little bit different than our residential and our multifamilies, just because you don't know what you have. Find out what you got first. Fire attacks to be initiated at the closest access to the fire. There again, it's such a big area, it makes better sense to take a second or so figure out where it is, figure out how big it is, and then have units come and then come into the best achievable way to actually get fire suppression, right? Versus having to make some crazy, massive, long lay. Why? We're delaying time. It's so much quicker to drive the truck to a particular door or entryway versus actually trying to have our crews extend lines and stretch lines all the way through some massive maze. Stage units until fire location is known. There again, level 2 staging. Everybody hold on for a second. Let's figure out what we got, and then I'll tell you where we need you to come in at. Does that make sense? Kind of keeps things organized. Once location is determined, resources to be deployed in the order to support the fire attack. There again, keeping everything organized. Because it may be, hey look, I don't want that engine in first. I might want this truck in first and engine to pull around to the trolley side. Right? Level 2. Figure out what you got, figure out how you want to play the game, or play the game. So what do you get on the first alarm for these commercials? You get 4 engines, 1 aerial, 1 chief officer, and 1 medic unit. Right? We've heard this before, right? Heard this before. So when we look at a little algorithm or a little sheet here, it says first dude's gonna do what? It's gonna investigate. You're gonna figure out where you're at. Figure out what you got. Second dude's probably gonna be attack. Third dude a little different. Third dude's gonna be water supply or possibly tapping an FDC if it's there. All right, and of course, obviously looking at adjacent units, especially if you're looking at some type of commercial structure in a strip mall or some type of residential major commercial type commercial structure. Of course, fourth dude's gonna do truck work. They're again prepare for roof conditions and possibly preparing for roof operations of these commercial structures, getting folks up on the roof to get that roof work done. Fifth dude's actually gonna be RIT. BC, of course, obviously you'll come and take over command. And of course, obviously the white wave will come, and of course, obviously with this, or that second BC, folks should be in gear for commercial. Why? Because on a commercial structure, this may be when you actually start getting assigned to do operations, or you might be assigned to actually have a particular area on the alpha side, or you may be assigned to actually go interior on the second floor to be Division 2. Does that make sense? So if you're that second officer, then that's when you want to make sure you bring your gear with you. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so homework. We'll give y'all some homework, man. You got some stuff for y'all to do too, man. Got T-Mac up here talking all day long. We got some work for y'all to do. Stuff for you to do. All right, so this is actually learn the lesson, learn the language, the ESOL, if you will. This is for you to actually learn what we talk about. So in the back of that document, the guideline, there's a bunch of definitions, right? So what we want to do as a county is get everybody understanding what we're saying. Because we know our individual jargon and our fire service jargon and then regional jargon, we want to make sure everyone in the county is actually kind of speaking and identifying the words the same way. I think it's on page 15. On page 15?
Yeah, accountability, all this.
Yeah, page 15, thank you. So page 15. So this could be your guys' homework. Over the next few days or so, if you guys have an opportunity, please read over this and just make sure that those terminology and definitions kind of work and make sense to you, as well as get with your company officers, get with your crews to make sure they're reading over that as well. So this way they kind of know what language and lingo we're speaking of. So one thing you want to talk about is also too is this. I want to talk about this. So, and I'm going to say it, I'll be the elephant in the room. I'll throw it out there and get y'all going. So wear 2 patches on my sleeve. So I'll talk a little bit about my blue patch for a second. All right, that's my paramedic patch right there. All right, so back in the day, when I was actually riding on a rescue truck, it was easier at times. It was easier at times if it actually was dual medics on the truck. Especially if I did intubation. Oh my gosh, I said intubation. Right, and we're doing an intubation, right, and I'm getting ready to tube somebody, right? It's easier sometimes if I had a medic. Why? Because they already know what I need before I get to it, right? So I'm getting ready to tube this cat, and they already know, hey, look, he's going to do a 10cc syringe, he's going to do the stylet. I'm sorry, the steroid. You got to move your camera just a certain way and get that lined up. And they just hit the recorder, but that's what they're doing. They got all this equipment, Can you hit this, but for us to have to do it manually, they know exactly what it is. And I say that to say this. Is that really in the fire service, if we can teach our folks from our chief officers down to a very beginning firefighter, what our guidelines are, what our shared goals are, what our mission is, and how we want to achieve that, it's just to make that fire scene better. right? If your folks know what you're gonna ask before you ask of it, it's gonna make things easier. Or have a thought process of that they're probably gonna ask us to do this because we're third due or second due or fourth due or whatever the case may be. It's just gonna make life so much easier. So if we can, let's share this information, let's share those definitions, let's share the functions and things that we're trying to get accomplished. Why? It's gonna make that fire ground easier. Folks are gonna be dancing to the same movement. We're gonna be making things happen, and things will be a lot more fluid, and at the end, the number one goal, life safety, is gonna make their lives and their opportunities better. Why? Because we'll be able to effectively, more efficiently, be able to take care of the job that we're all here for. Does that make sense a little bit? So this as a guideline, as a reference, the whole purpose of this thing is to make us better at what we do. And it has to be shared, it has to be done. So this is one of the first times I think we've actually done some type of ICVC training without everybody else, and just for us to get into a room and talk and share the mission, share the goal. I know a lot of times we've actually done training where, okay, you sit right here, now you got, the pressure on all your peers looking at you as you're trying to go through this tactical scenario. So this is a little bit different, because the goal of this is, hey, to get us all on the same page, just get us all kind of thinking the same way and make sure that we can achieve it. And then hear from you guys as far as, hey, this works or this doesn't work. All right, so just kind of finish up the lectures now. Questions, what do you guys have? What thoughts do you guys have? What do you guys feel about this document, this reference, this basic practice, best practices, if you will? What do you guys feel? What do you guys think about it?